Alright, hello and welcome to this tutorial on Sketchup Make. Now most of the tutorials I've done have been for students on Sketchup Pro, but I decided I want to try Sketchup Make. That's what it used to be called, but now it's the Sketchup Web. And it is going to be a little bit of a challenge because I'm used to using plugins, and Sketchup Web has 0 plugins, and so I have to learn how to use things natively. It's not a problem, but we're going to learn together. So this is a tutorial kind of on the basics of how SketchUp Web works, and then we'll move into some basic tools, moving, copying, scaling, and whatnot. So first, let's talk about the interface here. On the left hand side, this is where our tools are. Also, we have this 3-bar menu where you can export STL files for 3D printing. Also, other machines have used STLs in the past, so you can also export as an OBJ file or DAE file so that you can open it up in Blender or other software. Okay, so let's talk about some of these tools here. We have the regular select, the eraser, the paint bucket, the line tool, the arc tool, the rectangle tool, the push-pull, this is like your extrusion, the outer shell. This one's kind of new to me, so let me see what this is. Wait, no it's not. These are your solid tools. Okay, this is in the Pro version. These are your solid tools. Very handy, but in SketchUp Web, if you just stick with the free version, you can't use union, subtract, trim, and whatnot. You have to do it with intersecting faces, which isn't too bad, but it can be a mess sometimes. Your move tool, your tape measure tool, which is extremely handy if you're doing precise engineering parts, like what I use SketchUp Pro for. Okay, so let's talk about over here on the left, the right hand side. So this is going to open up your default trays, is what they're called. So if we click on this figure right here, her. Oh, I don't know why SketchUp is going so slow. Oh, you need the select tool. It's a little different than Pro. Okay. So usually if you have, let's say, the eraser tool open, if you hit spacebar, it should go back to your regular select. Let's try it again. E for eraser, spacebar for select. Okay. If you highlight her, it doesn't give you any information. You have no idea what's going on with this person. But if you go to the right and you click on this one called Entity Info, it'll tell you it's a component. The instance name is Helen. The definition is Helen. It's got the default material and there's no tags. Okay, so don't worry about outliner. That's only in the upgraded version. That actually is kind of like a model tree. It lists everything that's in there. It's very handy to have. Instructor is really handy. It tells you all about a tool, like the select tool. It tells you the modifier keys. So I'm going to close that one for now. 3D Warehouse, it's where you can download 3D models. Components, this kind of tells you, actually, it tells you what components you have in your model. Excuse me, we have Helen. Or you can go to search 3D Warehouse for more components. So, materials, styles. Styles is where you can change the way the background looks and the faces and the edges of things. So these are all things that you can play with. There's one called X-ray, and that allows you to see through objects so that you can connect lines. I don't know why it's taking so long to load, but it is. Let's see. Tags, I don't use tags, but we'll talk about those later. Views, display. So views comes in handy if it's what I'm thinking it is. Yes. So your different isometric views, actually can't use the word isometric, your different viewports, one of them is isometric and whatnot. So yes, look up here for your styles. If you go to let's just click on default styles, and here's all these. So if I click on X-ray, I don't know why it's taking so long. Okay, so once it loads, you can kind of see how she's gone more transparent. And you can see the green axis through her now, through her boots. that allows you to make lines behind them or inside an object. So we'll talk more about that later. One of the best styles, though, that I like to use is woodworking style. That creates, there's no sky in the background, it just creates a great altogether, all-around style that I can work with. Now, to orbit like this, you hold your middle mouse button in, and that's your orbit. To pan, you hold shift, middle mouse button, and that moves. Now, if you look at the bottom right here, it tells you some things about the tool that you're on as well. So if I middle mouse button, it says drag to orbit, shift pan, control suspends gravity. So you're kind of, it's a different way of viewing an object in space. Okay, bottom right corner where it says measurements, this is where you get to type in your exact dimensions. So let's go ahead and try this. I'm going to go ahead and delete Helen, we don't need her. Actually we do, but later on it's nice to see someone that's being scaled. Okay, one other thing that's extremely important, I'm going to go ahead and close styles, so we don't need that. I don't need views at the moment, but we need to find one called model info. Okay, this is extremely important. This is how you tell it what units you're using. So I always model big, so I always go meters, and I usually use double lot or triple lot precision. Now the reason why I model big is so if I have, so a person, so 1 meter is the same thing as either 1 foot or 1 inch in my mind when I scale. So if I see a 6 foot person, to me, like if I were to scale Helen, instead of her being average 6 feet, she's going to be 6 meters tall. Now the reason why I do that is because when you're making small precision parts to be 3D printed, like threads, and they're all in millimeters, and it says 0.25 millimeters, and you're trying to do intersecting faces and everything, those faces can glitch out and leave open holes in the mesh. So if you scale it 1,000 times, so it's 0.25 meters for a face, it's easier for faces to stay closed rather than to lose any geometry. So model big, and then I'll show you how to scale down with the tape measure tool. Let's discuss that now so that you don't panic. Okay, hit R for the rectangle tool. If the web version will keep up. Okay, R for the rectangle tool. Now look at the bottom left, select first corner, or hit Control to select center. So what does that look like? We're going to start at the origin. Okay, now look at your bottom right, it says dimensions. Let's go just straight along the red axis. Okay, notice it's 0 when we're going along the red axis, so it's length by, I don't know if you want to call that height or width, you guys decide. But to force it in a direction, if you hit the right arrow key, it forces it along the red axis. See that? If you hit the up arrow key, it will make it along the blue. Left is green, and it constrains it to that. Now, if we start here and we go along like this, and see how you kind of have it in the direction you want to go. See how it's blue? If I hold shift and then it becomes bold, that'll constrain it as well. So I'm just going to hit the up arrow because I want it in the blue direction, and I need my rope. Okay, so if I type in 10, 10, it'll make a square. Now Control Shift E will do what we call zoom extents. Kind of zooms in on the entire thing. You can see it's a perfect square. If you don't believe it, hit T for the tape measure tool, and you can move from one end to the other. Look at the bottom right, and it says 10 meters, or it shows it on the screen. Now speaking of guides, if you hover over a line, left click and hold and drag, hit the right arrow key, you can see how you can make this guide. I'm going to type in 5. Now it puts a guide right at the center point. Also, if you want to do center point, left click drag, and right there with that little blue dot, it'll do midpoint. So now we have a perfect intersection point. Guides are extremely important if you're going to make precise parts. Okay, hit P for push-pull. When the face has all these dots on it, it means you're highlighting on that face. Push-pull only works on faces. It does not work on curved faces. So go ahead, left click, hold, move it up. Bottom right corner you can see your distance. Go ahead and type in 10, and that'll extrude it 10. Hit spacebar to deselect the current tool. Now, if you click on an edge, you can select your edges or a face. So now what can we do if we select an edge? There is a lot that we can do. So let's make a rock. Okay, so I'm going to grab this bottom edge right here on this side. Okay, now you're going to hit the M for move tool. You're going to grab it at the midpoint. You're going to click once, and you're just going to go along the green axis. So hit the left arrow key to constrain it. See, and we're just going to do that. Click there. Move tool is your friend for lines, and we're just going to, I don't know, like that. So now we got this kind of cool trapezoidal shape. Now if you double click, notice it selects the bounding edges and the face. But if you triple click, it selects the entire thing. Now with this, you can right click, make it a component or a group. Components, you give it a name, okay, and you hit, you don't need to worry about any of this. Do not do glue to, you don't want things to stick. And then you just hit OK. Alright, so now we have a component that has this bounding box. But what's the difference between components and groups? Well, if we were to make a copy of this, and how you make a copy, there's two ways. If you hit M for move, okay, you grab a corner. Now notice it says down in the bottom left, Control equals toggle copy. Tap Control or hold it, click, and now let go of Control, and you can go ahead and move your copy. So now we have a copy, but what makes this so unique to be a component? Let's go to our components real quick. I forget which one it is. This one. So in model we have Helen and Rock, but Helen's been deleted, so but in model just means what was originally there. So double click to get inside edit mode. Notice the bounding box becomes the dancing ants. P for push pull. I'm going to grab this. Oh, look what's happening to the other one. It's editing that, so whatever you do to this one will happen to the other. Now if you don't want it to do that, what you want to do is right click and go make unique, and this makes this component completely unique from this one, so you can edit it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I'm going to go ahead and right click and hit explode. That gets rid of the component. Now I'm going to right click, make group. Now groups is just what it says, it's a group. No attributes are shared at all. So let's hit Q for rotate, and notice down here it says Control equals toggle copy as well. So if I go to the midpoint, okay, you click, and I want to rotate on. So you first click what face you want to rotate, and then you click on what axis you want. So I want it on the red axis. I'm going to hold Control, I'm going to left click, and then I'm going to start rotating, and you'll see that copy being rotated inside. If I don't want that, I hit escape. Okay, let's talk about making an array of things. M for move, click with Control, bring it down here, set it your distance, let's go with 20, okay? Then I'm going to hit X, and I'm going to hit 6. Control Shift E, and now you can see it made 6 copies. Okay, you can do the same thing with the rotate tool. If you have a circle or a bolt hole that you want to rotate in 360 degree pattern, you can figure out how many degrees. You can draw your first part, make the cut, and then copy that and rotate it however many times you want by degrees. let's go ahead and try that. So Control A selects everything. I'm going to hit delete. We'll come back to the rock here in a minute. C for circle. Notice bottom right hand corner it says sides is 24. If you're going to be 3D printing, I usually go with 48. I always do it in a factor of 12. Okay, bring it along the green axis. Let's just go with 65. Let's extrude by 2 with the push-pull tool, which is P. Okay, so I'm going to, anytime I make a model, let's talk about when geometry gets mixed. So right now it's not a group. So groups or components are extremely important, because now if I draw on this face, okay, now if I take this and hit M, and I start moving it, it moves. Okay, so now, whoops. Let's move it there. Let's push-pull tool. We get what we call like sticky geometry. So if I only wanted to select this cylinder, notice how when I triple click it selects everything. So if I want to move that face, see, I can move up and down, but when I try to move this way, okay, so double click, hold shift, double click. Now let's just try to move the whole cylinder. Okay, you can move the entire cylinder off of the other group. Now that's interesting, because in the Pro version you get sticky geometry, and sometimes it sticks and it has a hard time separating the two. So what I always do, I'm going to delete that, is I'll always make my geometry separate groups. So there's that one. Okay, so now let's talk about that rotate thing I was talking about. So I'm going to hit T for tape measure. I'm going to click on blue axis. I'm just going to slide down a little bit so you can see the red handles. It says 0 meters, and I'm going to let go. Notice bottom right here, created a guide. I'm creating guides along my axes because that's going to be really important for me. Okay. And in fact, I'm going to open this. I want to extrude it the other direction. And this is important too. Notice the color just changed. That means the faces are backwards. We don't want reverse faces. So triple click and hit reverse faces. Okay, now we're back. Now we can see my guides on the top right here. So I want, if I hit C for circle, I'm going to go up the red axis, and I'm going to place it right here at 48. Okay. Now you see how it looks all weird? That's because we have a circle on top of a group, and that's okay. It means they're separate geometry. That's what we want. So now I want to place a bolt hole right here in the center, but where's the center of that? Easiest way is hit L for line tool, draw up, okay, and now C for circle, and it'll find the midpoint for you. Let's just make, oh, no, that's too big. Let's just make a 5mm hole. Okay, so now it's time to erase the line. It accidentally erased our guide, but that's okay. You can hit T for tape measure and redo it. Okay. Now I want to rotate that 90 degrees, and that's going to be 4 times. Or I can just rotate it 4 times. There's a couple of ways to do this. So I'm going to double click that circle, hit Q for rotate. So now make sure it's selected. What you want to rotate has to be selected. Go to the center, click once, click along the red axis, hold Control. Excuse me, look at the bottom right. It shows you the angle in degrees. So now you can just type an angle, like 45, and then you can take a calculator and do 360 divided by 45 and figure out how many you need. Or have SketchUp do the math for you, and I want to say, okay, give me just a second here. Okay, so If we wanted to do it at 45, there's a couple ways we can do it. We can type in 45. So I hate when the Sketchup web version does this. It's not an issue with the web version, it's an issue with my video capture software wanting to take over the controls. Whoops. Let's do this again. Hold Control. There we go. So type in 45, hit enter. Now type in X and hit the number 5. See? And it rotates it along that center line 5 times. Now if you know how many you needed, you say, okay, I need 3 of them across that whole thing, and you don't want to do the calculations with a phone or a calculator, just double click, hit Q for rotate, which is right here. This is the rotate tool on the left hand side. Go to the origin, click once, go along the red axis, hold Control until you see that copy. Now type in 360, hit enter, then division by 3. And there you go. Now you have 3 bolt holes perfectly spaced. Okay? So now you can get rid of this, because that was just a guide. And there we go. If you wanted to, you could now push-pull. If you push-pull it, let's say 12, hit enter. Instead of push-pulling this and typing 12, if you double-click, did you go the wrong way? Sometimes it does that. I guess this time it's doing it. So just move it up a little bit, hit 12. Maybe this one will do it. I guess not. Okay. Sometimes it's smart, sometimes it's not. Okay, now you've got your pegs, or if you want to make holes through it, you can. Now, in the Pro version, what Solid Tools was is, I'm going to go ahead, right-click, and I'm going to hit Hide. What Solid Tools was, if you pull these down, okay, we're just going to pull them an arbitrary length. Triple click. I'm going to make this one a group. I'm going to go back into... I got to figure out how to unhide everything. Give me just a second. Okay, so it's a little bit different than the Pro version. Excuse me. If you go down here and click on Display and then hit Hidden Objects, it'll show you what's hidden, so that way you don't lose, because I couldn't find it. So right click and then unhide. So that's very important to know. That's new to me. So Display, Hidden Objects. Without it, it's hard to find your hidden object. Okay, so let's open up Entity Info. Notice when it's selected, it says Solid Group. That's very important when you upgrade, or even when you don't upgrade. You want solids because they print better. It means they can hold water. They're airtight. So you want your groups to be solid. Now, in the upgraded version, this right here, if you were to click this one and then it's called Subtract, you say subtract this from that, it'll cut a hole. Really helpful. But we don't have that in this version. So what you actually have to do is, it's a little bit more complicated and I'm not the best at it, but if you go inside a group, triple click, and you cut it, so Control X. Okay, I'm going to give this a shot. Hopefully I don't mess it up. And then you open this one up and you right click. There should be a Paste in Place option. And you click that and give it a moment to figure out. Okay. Then you're going to select with the left drag down towards the bottom right. And you're going to right click and you're going to hit Intersect Faces with Context. Okay, notice it put edges around right here. So hopefully if you did it right, you can start erasing things. and whoops, select that, hit delete, and then come down here, do the same thing. Let's get rid of that, hit the space bar, select the face only. You don't want to get rid of your bounding line. If you do, then that's no bueno, and then hit delete. Okay, notice now you should have a through hole. That is how you would cut a hole through an object with using two solids. So that's very important. So let's try that again. Let's make sure, you got to make sure, well, they don't all have to be groups, but triple click, Control X, double click inside this group, paste in place. As soon as it pastes, you're going to right click and do intersect faces with context. Notice that that line now shows up. If I hit Control Z, it's not there. Control Y to bring it back. Okay, eraser tool, get rid of this top portion right there. Okay, now you have the face or you have the line. If you get rid of the line, just see how it breaks it. Now there's no face there. Control Z, we want to get rid of the face, because those lines have gone all the way through. Remember, that tube was touching everywhere, because this is what we call a surface or a face modeler. So now you just come back down here, erase this one. Uh-oh, I did too much. Just want that line. Oh no. Ah, interesting. Notice it didn't make the line right there. So that's good to know. So maybe it was just a bad selection. So right there, right click, intersect faces with context. Now mess around with model, with context, and with selection. You'll learn a lot. Make sure the bounding lines are on both. Now they are, so go ahead, delete, delete, spacebar, left click, delete, delete. Now you've got a hole. Notice it's that blue color, so you might want to double click it and go to reverse faces, and you're good to go. Okay, so for today, I think that's a lot of information for you guys to learn. We went over making of how to do the measurements, the sides of circles, and how to make copies. Next, we'll learn about the scale tool. The scale tool is very important. If you're going to do concept art, that's probably one of the biggest tools is scale, move, and eraser tool when it comes to concept art. So, anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope this helps you guys out. And stay tuned for more.